King Noble, Black Supremacy. With this particular video, I want to talk about familiarity as the final inception of the Matrix. This is a very important piece because I feel like a lot of people have got beyond a lot of Matrix inceptions, particularly Black supremacists. But the final one and the most tricky one is familiarity. Because a lot of us are clear. We challenge with the religions. We ask the right questions. We challenge our imams, preachers, rabbis. We challenge them. And we asked the right questions. And we woke up and we saw the mental programming of religious dogmatism and religious ideology. So we woke up from that one. And we became conscious of who we are on deeper levels of our existence. And then we saw the social and societal programming of the government and the school system. We broke through that one. The institutionalization. We saw that one. Then we broke through media, propaganda, television, commercials, consumerism, the consensus reality. We broke through that. We ain't even so much looking for social validation anymore. We broke through all of them. We can see them. We can point them out ourselves. You're not going to give us a white God. You're not going to keep us shackled and imprisoned within religion. Religions given to us by our slave masters, whether it's an Arab slave master or a white slave master, not going to work anymore. We're thinking hard. We even broke through some of the scientific dogmatism, dealing with quantum physics and going beyond the fundamental traditional ways of perceiving the material universe and material reality. We've transcended above that. We understand that your television, your propaganda, your news, fake news, all that is keeping us locked into a certain paradigm, clear on it. Hip hop, music videos, commercials, programming. Many of us clear on that. Then the consensus reality, trying to fit in, seeking social validation, being like everybody else, marching directly into the FEMA camps, into the concentration camps. Many of us are not going. But the final inception is familiarity. And familiarity is a deep one because it doesn't require logic or you to think. See, beliefs require you to think and to reach and exhaust thought to the point where you believe in something. Or you believe in Jesus. You believe in this and that idea that you can't necessarily prove. But when you get to the edge of your understanding, you cling on to belief. But you still have to think. It's still an idea. But familiarity doesn't require you to think. And the only thinking that you do with familiarity is reinforcing a certain paradigm because it is familiar to you and attracting it in your life and reinforcing it in your life. And you maintain the prison. You maintain the inception, the box, through familiarity. meaning that you gravitate more of what's familiar to you for the feeling of familiarity, and you push away from that which is unfamiliar to you. Freedom would be unfamiliar. You never had it before. Stepping outside of the matrix and outside of the program is an unfamiliar place. It's not to things seem unfamiliar to you. Do you begin to realize that you're somewhere else? You're somewhere else in your life. The unfamiliarity is okay. You have unfamiliar experiences, see unfamiliar things. That means you have stepped outside of the inception, the matrix, the programming. Nothing's familiar to you. None of the codes, none of the scripts. How you perceive things, even yourself, can become a space of unfamiliarity because you never even knew yourself outside of the program. You never knew yourself outside of the social conscious prison. So it's not to things become unfamiliar. Are you actually breaking free and breaking out? But sometimes the unfamiliarity shocks people and it runs them right back into the matrix because they end up identifying, agreeing, co-signing, and reinforcing the matrix just based off familiarity alone, not even thinking, not common sense, not facts, not logic, not sound right reason, none of that. Just because it's familiar. And they find themselves accepting and embracing stupidity because it is familiar, and rejecting enlightened wisdom and elevated consciousness because it's unfamiliar. Let me tell you this. If your life looks familiar to you, if everything is familiar, if you're on a path towards familiarity, if you crave familiarity daily, you are not on a path of freedom and liberation. You are not getting beyond the program. If things in your life are not unfamiliar to you, the people no longer familiar to you, you don't understand why they do the things that they do. And the things that you're seeing around you, the decisions that people are making, none of it makes any sense to you. You're starting to wake up. Because the matrix used to make sense to you, and it used to be the only sense you knew and the only sense that you were allowed to know. Because you were never allowed to really think for yourself. But once you begin to wake up, you end up on unfamiliar grounds. Some of us will run back to familiarity. That's why we come up with new religions with the same template as old religions. We come up with new holidays, the same template as old holidays. We still want that familiarity. New names, new clothes, new outfits. The same template. Afraid of the unfamiliar. Unable to stand in it. Don't have the courage or the bravery to stand in the unfamiliar. That's your new paradigm. That's the new reality. It's going to be unfamiliar. And you have to shake off the desire and the urge to try to make things conform to what is familiar to you. Because that's redesigning and remanufacturing your prison. I just said the people that you once knew will not be familiar to you. You'll lose the sense of familiarity in your life. And the only way things will become familiar to you again is if you completely go back to sleep and accept the inception in its totality. You can't have half and half. Because once you reject the bondage of the mental prison and you escape from that prison, things are going to be very unfamiliar. A lot of fugitives, people on the run, turn themselves in. They just give up, surrender. Not because they weren't free, but because the type of freedom they had was not familiar to them. And they would rather be in prison if it's familiar than live in a state of unfamiliar freedom. And that's how powerful the programming is. It then use your logic because it know you'd have got rid of that. It then use your belief because now you're about the facts. It know you're not going to believe anything that you see and that you've woken up on many different levels. And now it must attach itself to your familiarity to remanufacture the inception, to remanufacture the matrix. It clings to your familiarity to reproduce and reinforce the pattern that you have been trying to escape, to manifest something new, to tap your potential on new levels, to become awakened to who you really are, beyond the illusion that they gave you, that's plugged into their world, that they suck and feed off of until your date of expiration physically. Look around. If everything is familiar to you, everyone is familiar to you. If you're even looking for familiarity, you're re-anchoring yourself in an old, outdated consciousness framework that was meant to run and rule your mind for the rest of your life and keep you with the masses of asses. And this mental prison that we're calling the matrix. The final inception is familiarity. The fight, the quest, the struggle to maintain familiarity in one's life makes them continue to do the same thing and accept the same ideas. No matter how destructive, how foolish, how ignorant, how unprogressive that they are. They're just familiar. And you'll make the rest up. Now you can lie to yourself. You don't have to believe. You don't have to have logic. Your familiarity will make you lie. Will make you live in denial. And make you make up truths to just only maintain what you're familiar with. Not what makes sense. Not what's truth. Not what's freedom. Not what's liberation. Like Christmas. One day you found out that Christmas was not real, that Santa Claus was never coming, and that it was made up. But your sense of familiarity made you pass on Santa Claus and Christmas to your children and start making up lies to them about Santa Claus, even though you knew it wasn't real. Your familiarity made you recreate a lie and illusion in the matrix in your life. It happened the same way with religion. You knew that ain't nobody coming back in the clouds. That this was a made-up story, an illusion full of parables and myths and allegories, and there's no truth to it. They selected whatever books they felt like. You knew this stuff wasn't true and it was outlandish. And there's no evidence of some of the feats and the things that I've spoke of in some of these books. But since it was the only thing that's familiar to you, you begin to justify it and make up lies and rationalize. Just off familiarity alone. Familiarity is dangerous. If you're not seeing things and experiencing things that are not familiar to you, it's only because you are scared to step beyond the limits of the mental imprisonment that was fed to you for the majority of your life. You know better. You sense better. You feel better. You understand more. But your emotions is tied into familiarity. So you just can't let that stuff go. It's now become a part of who you are, even though your conscious mind knows better, is beyond, can contemplate and conceptualize more. Your emotions is connected to it. You can't let it go. It's too familiar. So now you have to deceptively rationalize with yourself and make up a truth that recreates and remanufactures the mental prison. And keep that going in your life. You know, you're so far beyond it. You're ready for something else. You're ready for that new paradigm, that new reality. You're ready for that new world, that new consciousness, that new experience. You're ready to tap your unlimited potential. You're ready for that. But you're a slave to familiarity, the final inception. You're hooked and addicted to what's familiar, to those who are familiar, to a perception of others that is familiar. And that keeps you in the prison beyond your own logic, intellect, consciousness. Familiarity is the final inception. Just because you are familiar with something doesn't mean that reality is limited to that. And that familiarity does nothing but limit your reality and keeps you returning as a faithful slave to the reality that you so deeply seek to transcend. This is King Noble Black Supremacy. Join my website, www.kingnobleuncensored.com. Donate and don't hate. Subscribe to my new YouTube page, King Noble Guru. You're on it now. Hit the notification button. Turn it on so you can get notifications every time I put out a new video, so you can be on the front line of this information, on the spiritual cusp of this thought-provoking and radically life-changing information. Turn your notification on. Hit the like button. Black Supremacy.